Hello and welcome to episode 12 of the Paranormal Paradigm podcast, and it's the first episode of 2020. So happy New Year to you all, and we hope you had a very good Christmas and New Year celebrations, and myself and Ben are back.
We are.
No video today. Hear the nation sigh collectively. Nope, didn't hear anything.
Nope.
So today we were going to be interviewing a guest, a guy called Les Champion, and he is a fellow member of our investigation group, who we've known for a good few years now. And he was going to come on and he was going to talk about the grassroots of paranormal investigation and what got us into it and stuff like that, and what he likes about the hobby, what he doesn't like, and what got him into it from a very young age. But unfortunately, family issues, he's had to pull out, and we've postponed him. But what we thought we would do is do exactly the same without Les, almost like a part one, about us and what we feel about it all.
Yep.
And then part two, get Les on, and Les can give us his opinion and maybe have a debate about what we've said. Because I know Les, without kind of talking for him, he's quite old school in terms of his techniques. Having investigated with him, God knows how many times.
I was going to say, it's been a lot of times we've been on investigations with him now.
He has very old school techniques. His wife Anne, both lovely people, Anne is a Reiki healer, which comes in handy at times during investigations. For me, she's worked wonders on me when I get very empathetic and start to feel emotions, some of which we spoke about on the last video. How was your Christmas anyway, Ben?
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. Yeah, it was a standard Christmas you get with a nearly 5-year-old child. So,
right, yeah, I guess mine was as standard as you could get with a 3-month-old child.
Yeah.
Basically, he just didn't have a Christmas at all. He was okay, but I wanted to go back to work for a break. I couldn't wait to go back. Right, so
well, let's dive
get
into
in.
it.
Yeah, so there's no intro or anything because it's just us. Feels weird without a video.
Yeah, I know. But
okay, so do you want to go first? I mean, any of you guys that listened to our pilot, actually, you may remember we spoke about very, very briefly, like a 7-minute clip, what got us into this kind of thing. But we're going to go into a bit more depth now. So over to you, Ben.
Yeah, so I've always said that it was kind of yourself that got me more into the paranormal aspect of things. I've always, seen these programs on TV, and I'm sure we'll discuss this at some point, like, your Most Haunted and ghost stories and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I've always been very skeptical. I still am very skeptical about anything. But it was only once you started mentioning about, maybe going on an investigation and that sort of thing that it started to pique my interest a little bit. And it's sort of just mothballed from there, I guess. And obviously we're here now where we are, going on investigations and all that sort of thing. And it just seems to have become quite a big interest of mine, really, considering it was something where before I would just brush off and be like, nah, don't talk stupid,
Well, I remember we Ben and I used to work together. And I remember when we first went out on an investigation for the first time together, we were getting all excited, we booked it up, and we were researching things like spirit boxes, and we were listening to video after video. I mean, at the time,
Well, there was a guy who I used to watch on YouTube, and
I think
I'm struggling to remember his name. It was Steve something.
I think he still goes. Steve, was it Hub? Huff.
Steve Huff.
That's it, yeah.
And he had a YouTube channel, and he used to upload audio from his spirit boxes. And he also had another box that he had where things would come through extremely clearly.
Okay.
Like it was a specially made box. And as this podcast goes on, I'll try and find what it was called because it's intriguing. But that was what sort of got me interested. I was like, these voices are coming through on this device. Is there something there? Is there not? Is it just random bits of radio that it's picking up, you know? And I suppose I still feel a bit like that. But I've now seen and heard a lot more where I've gone, oh, that's a bit more specific than what you'd expect.
I think the specificness of a message or of an audio clip can really be the difference between believing it or not.
Yes, yeah.
If you have something that really hits home to you, something personal, an experience, then it really can be the defining line as to whether you believe what you've heard or not. But yeah, I remember we were watching these videos, listening to these videos, and getting dead excited about going on these investigations. And it kind of went from there. We went on 1, went on 2, went on 3, and then that was it.
Just got more and more.
Yeah, I mean, from my personal point of view, I grew up in a haunted house. My mum would regularly shout at her deceased nan for moving furniture around in our living room. Even after she died, she used to want it her way. The child gate would slam at the top of the stairs to tell my mum she hadn't locked it properly, to prevent me and my brother falling down the stairs. Our mobiles would turn themselves on when we were laying in bed as children. So a lot used to happen there. And when you grow up, like I say, seeing your mum shout at something that's not there, and you're only used to her shouting at you, you kind of begin to question what else is there, what's in our world that we can't see.
I just want to clarify for anyone listening that when you say your mobiles would turn on, you mean the things that hang over your bed, not a mobile phone.
I mean, we're talking like 1993, 94 or something. So yeah.
Just for anyone listening, I just want to clarify that.
My Instagram was updated when I woke up in the morning. I didn't know how. So that was it. That was it for me, really. That sparked my interest for it. And then I had a real up close and personal UFO experience, which set off a bunch of synchronicity. And then I ended up going on some investigations that I didn't like. And we've spoke about this before, haven't we? Where we talk about groups
that try and like make stuff happen and sort of put the idea in your head of what's happening rather than letting you experience it yourself.
Yeah, and that's what it was at these groups, and it still happens today. And finally, me and Ben decided to go on one together, and the group we went with was the group we settled with. Mm-hmm. And the reason was because they did let you experience things yourself. They used to write things down and take notes, but it was only at the end they would ask you.
Yeah, they'd always said, they're not going to tell you anything.
Plant it subconsciously into your mind.
They just let you experience it. You say out what you want, they make a note, and at the end, if it's relevant to anything, they'll say, oh, yeah, that was because of this, or that was because of that. Or...
I listened to there's a paranormal investigator called Kieran Begg, UK-based, and I listened to a podcast he was on, and he spoke about 30 East Drive, which is a famous place in the UK that people go to investigate. And when they turned up, you pay X amount of money, basically, and you get this house for the night. And I think it's the next door neighbours have the keys and they have the money and they look after it all. And there's this woman there who is quite famous now for basically setting you up for the night. And when he went, he was very aware of the tricks of the trade and what to look out for. And, I think it was like she took him to the house and she mentioned several times, watch this door, be careful of this door, this door. And it's almost like she was setting something up in him.
Yeah.
And, for the rest of the night, he couldn't help but think, what's wrong with that door? And it did move, apparently. Kieran, if you listen to this, let me know if I'm getting this story wrong. It did move. And, you can't help but think, though, then, well, is it set up?
Well, exactly. If you've been told to watch something and then something happens, you're going to think, well, they've obviously...
They've set that up. So
you're gonna instantly think, have they planted something? Have they done something? Is it on a piece of fishing wire?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's
a natural thing, though.
It is, and I don't think you can help feeling like that. Really.
But I also think that a lot of people that aren't used to these investigations wouldn't catch on to that.
No, they wouldn't. And we spoke about before how people break down into particular categories, and some of these categories, they're people who don't want to believe, and a ghost could walk right up to them and slap them in the face, and they won't believe. There are people that want to believe. And therefore will believe everything and anything that they see and hear. And then there are other people who tend to look a little bit more strategically at what they're seeing to try and analyse whether they should believe it or not. And I think a lot of people want so much to believe that it doesn't matter what they hear or see, it is a ghost.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the groups that they go with, these groups we talk of, they don't do anything to discourage that kind of behaviour or that kind of thought process, because in fact it benefits them if they think like that, because they're going to keep going, keep giving money, because they're convinced that they keep experiencing something paranormal even if they aren't. So again, something you should always be aware of when you go on these investigations is these guys, they make money out of you, and you're a paying customer. Just like when you go to buy a car and the salesman flashes you a nice smile, it's kind of the same as that. Equipment. Let's talk a little bit about equipment that we use. I know you're vastly trying to Google this box.
Yeah,
thing.
this box that this Steve Huff guy uses, he calls it the Wonder Box. It is a spirit box, but it's custom made to avoid all the static in between.
So it's just the words.
So it's just the words that come through.
Okay, and is that self-made? Can you get that? Can you buy that?
I think you can buy it, but it's not cheap.
Right, that's okay. We'll talk about that first then. So, ghost hunting equipment and their price categories. Anyone that's watched my presentation or plans to, this is part of what I talk about: equipment and the good and the bad about equipment. So, some certain pieces of equipment. Let's take the K2 or the EMF meter. It basically used to be used to diagnose leaky wiring, faulty microwaves, anything like that. Anything that was leaking EMF into your home. And you could get them relatively cheap. Then the ghost hunting industry decided to cotton on and start using it, and Yvette Fielding was running round houses with them and so on. So everybody would get one. And all of a sudden they go for £50. I've seen one for on Amazon. £50 for a K2 meter. Because they've put ghost hunting on the back of it, or ghost hunters, or because it's sold on ghosthunters.com. I've made that up. I don't know if that's a website.
It probably is.
Sorry if it is. But because they're on these they're associated with this, it's a cash cow, and people know they can milk it. Just like when you go to a theme park and you pay £10 for a burger because they know you're going to buy it.
You're there. They've got you trapped.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
So the K2 meter. I mean, what's your opinion on that?
The K2 meters, I've seen them flickering, because obviously the lights on there, they've got green lights, orange lights, and red lights, and the idea is if a spirit or some kind of electromagnetic force is to come near it, it makes the lights go up to the red. So I've seen enough times them flicker with the lights, go up to the red, they've stayed at the red, but there's always that doubt in my mind that, it could be someone's phone.
People tell you they've got it on flight mode, but have they really?
Have they really? One thing we've mentioned on previous podcasts is if you see someone holding one, you can manipulate the button on them.
Yeah,
I've seen a button on the front that makes the lights flicker if you're not quite pressing it all the way in. But sometimes, I've seen them. In fact, one of the times I've seen them actually flicker when I know no one has any signal on the phone is in Draco tunnels. And I've seen it, I think, once.
And there's not really any electric down there.
There's no real any electric down there. There's nothing that's going to give off that much of a
electromagnetic
signal.
Were we in the kitchen area?
I believe so.
We got it on the floor.
Yeah, and like I say, it was on the floor, and we were doing some calling there, and it flicked. The lights did, and I just remember thinking, okay, that's weird, because I know it's no one's phone. There's nothing down here that's powered.
You're 400 feet underground.
Yeah.
There's no signal. There's no lights. You are in the pitch black.
Yeah.
I mean, we've done outside investigations as well, and it's flickered then. And, there's two or three of you, all of your phones are on flight mode. And you think, well, what could be affecting it here? I'm stood in the middle of a graveyard.
Yeah.
There's no electrics.
There's always something that doubts in my mind, could it be it's picked up someone's Wi-Fi from a nearby house?
Yeah, anything I don't know. Anything, I mean, people take photos of it while it's active as well, and the flash of the camera and stuff like that can trigger it. Mm-hmm. And of course they then go, oh, look at that, it got worse then. It's because you've just took a picture of it with your phone. Again, something to be mindful of. So that's one piece of equipment that I think it's not that it's overrated. I mean, we have one.
It's a good little piece of equipment to have.
It's just not very trustworthy. It can be manipulated purposefully and also non-purposefully. Is that a word? Unintentionally.
Unintentionally, yeah.
By outside sources like mobile phones or whatever that you can't control. A piece of equipment that is similar-ish to it is what we call a REM pod, or a radiating electromagnetism pod. That's why we call it a REM pod, because it's a mouthful. And this is very similar to a theremin. So those old Victorian style instruments where you could move your hand closer to it and it would make a noise, it would get louder, and you move your hand away and it would get quieter without actually touching it. And the idea is that where the EMF meter will pick up any disturbances in the surrounding electromagnetic field, a REM pod actually produces its own magnetic field, and as you disturb it by putting your hand towards it, it kicks off, and then as you move away, it settles down again.
And kicks off is the right word, because
it can kick off.
It can really kick off.
Really kick off. And I find these a little bit more trustworthy because, yes, they can be faulty in themselves, faulty batteries and all that stuff, but it's producing its own field. So when it's being disturbed, it's being disturbed. Whereas in an EMF meter, it picks up surrounding electromagnetic field, which is constantly being disturbed, constantly being bombarded with Wi-Fi, 3G, 4G, everything else that's going on. So I just find the REM pod is a little bit more reliable when it comes to stuff like that. You can buy them and it's combined with a K2 almost, and it has the lights on like a K2, the aerial, it makes the sound like a REM pod. And if you're lucky enough to be able to afford a few of these, I mean, again, they go anywhere between £100 to £300.
Yeah.
One experiment is to maybe, if you're familiar with a place and you know that there's footsteps that are heard in a particular room, lay them out in a line several metres apart. And if you hear footsteps, or if you suspect there are footsteps, you might hear them trigger one after the other, as if something's walking past them and disturbing the field that they're producing, which would be interesting to hear.
So if you heard one set off and then the next one
and then the next one, yeah. Well, I remember we sat on the stairs at the electric club and people kept feeling like someone walking past them, and it kept going off, didn't it?
Yes, it did, yeah.
I remember that.
I mean, the REM pod, I've got to admit, is one of my favourite pieces of equipment.
Yeah, I notice you always go for it.
I always go for it. And it is interesting because the one that we use, you have to hold it when you switch it on because it sort of calibrates itself to the person that's there. So it knows that, I mean, it's not like a piece of smart equipment or anything like that, but it sort of knows that it can feel your presence, if you know what I mean.
Because if you touch it, it's going to go off. But once you've got hold of it,
it'll stop again, and then it won't go off until something else disturbs it. So I can be walking, up the stairs like I was at the electric club, and all of a sudden it just starts going crazy.
Yeah.
You know, or we can, like you said, we can leave it sat on the floor,
which is the best. I think this, this and the EMF meter that we talk of, and most pieces of equipment that are similar to this, EVP recorders and whatever, are best left unattended.
Yes,
on the floor.
Yeah.
If you're using it as part of an experiment and you want to have a visual on it, then fine, but put it in the middle of a circle or put it on a table. So you can see
as long as you try not to touch it or manipulate
it. Don't hold
anyway.
it, because EVP recorder, you think, I'm just going to scratch my arm. You forget that you're holding the recorder and it's going to pick up you scratching your arm. You don't think about it because it's just natural. And then when you listen back 2 days later, you can't remember scratching your arm. You don't know what you've picked up, and you put it down to it being paranormal, maybe.
Yeah.
Same with the REM pod. Classic example was, again, at the electric club, the cellar we've spoke of before. It's a tiny cellar. You're cramped, 5 or 6 people, and you're on top of each other. And quite common in the dark, you don't really know how close you're stood to someone, and the REM pod might go off, and it's just because the person in front of you's turned round and their elbows, come near.
Yeah, just come near the aerial.
And you think, oh, what was that? You can't see them, you can't feel them really, but you think it's paranormal. So they are best left unattended. Somewhere you can keep an eye on them, somewhere you can hear them. That's the best thing you can do for this kind of equipment. What other pieces of equipment are there?
We use, again, we've spoken about them, spirit boxes.
Spirit boxes, yeah.
That's another one, again, depending on how much you want to spend, you can get very expensive spirit boxes. You can get ones that start at about £40, and they can go up to hundreds. That one I was on about that a guy uses, I don't think you can actually get them anymore, but I believe he was charging a good few £100 for them. He was in America, so obviously it was in dollars, but they're a piece of equipment that is best. Now, these don't necessarily have any effect if you're holding them or if you're not, because they don't produce any electromagnetic field. They don't rely on an electromagnetic field. But I still feel like when you're using one, you should sort of put it down and just sit back and listen.
Mm-hmm.
When you're asking the questions, just sit back and listen, because you might pick up on something if you're in a more relaxed state than what you would if you're holding it and you were listening for something.
Yeah, I mean, we say that all the time. If you're sat staring in the dark, willing for something to happen, 9 times out of 10, it won't. It's the second you turn around, you start talking about what you watched on TV last night or what you had for tea, and all of a sudden, something out the corner of your eye or something will get thrown, something will move. And it's almost because you're not giving it any attention anymore.
Yeah.
It wants your attention back. I mean, the spirit box is great for those that don't know what one is. It's simply a scanner, a radio
Well, it's essentially
scanner,
a
frequency
radio
scanner.
that won't sit on one frequency.
Yeah, so when you change your radio station in your car, when it finds a station, it sticks. Whereas this basically has that ability taken out. So when it finds a station, depending on what setting you put it to, we tend to prefer 250 milliseconds. It will stop on the station for that long and then move on to the next one. And so you kind of get this bunch of static with bits of words as it's picking up each station, as it scans. So you are picking up radio stations, but the idea is that the spirit uses those stations to form words, to form
like phrases or sentences.
To be able to talk to you. Problem with this is it's a very, very susceptible to pareidolia, which is the phenomena where people will recognise patterns when there aren't any, so faces in clouds or whatever. So, I mean, a great example. We conducted a session, and there were so many, 6 or 7 of us sat round it, and we asked how many spirits are here with us, and we got a response. It said something, and about 4 people all told us that the number they'd heard was completely different to the next person. So someone had heard 6, someone had heard 11, someone had heard 8. And, if I say to you that now, it's 6, 11, 8, they don't sound anything like each other. You know what I'm saying. But these guys all interpreted it how they wanted to interpret it. It doesn't mean any of them were wrong or lying. It's just that that's how they interpreted it. Which is classic pareidolia, And of course, if you're grieving, we've had people come who've recently lost a loved one, and you're so desperate to hear something or so desperate to get some evidence, you will hear whatever you want to hear, and you'll recognise patterns even if they aren't there. And that is pareidolia. And it's the same with EVP recordings. You watch programs and they give you the subtitles to tell you what the EVP recording is saying.
Yeah.
You try covering that up before you know what it says and guess what it says. And I guarantee you at least 50-60% of the time, what you hear and what you think it says is not what the subtitles tell you. But the second you move your arm or whatever it is you're blocking the subtitles with, read the subtitles, listen to it together, and all of a sudden it will all make sense. And you'll think, oh yeah, that's what I can hear.
Well, it's a classic example that was all over the internet a while back, and it was a noise, and people were saying it sounded like either Yanni or Laurel.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
and that's a classic thing, because if someone put the word on the screen, you would hear that word, and you'd be convinced it definitely said that, and then they could put the other word on the screen, and you'd hear that.
Yeah, that's great. That is,
and that's a perfect example of that.
Yeah,
of someone using subtitles and already telling you what you're hearing.
Yeah. So again, I know I have anyway. I've spoken to people who've claimed to have caught certain things, and they've shown it me, and they always go to tell me, "Oh, it says whatever," and I always, stop them and say, "No, don't tell me. Don't tell me what it's going to say, because I want to hear this for myself." And very, very rarely do I tell them that I've heard what they wanted to tell me I would hear. So again, it's just this classic case of misinterpreting patterns or interpreting patterns that aren't really there. Let's talk about the big one. Bit of a question. What do you think is maybe the biggest piece of equipment and the most controversial? Obviously, it's opinion. It's all opinion. What do you think I'm talking about when I say that?
I'm not really sure, because when you say like controversial, the first things I think of are things like crystals.
Okay.
And dowsing rods.
Okay.
Because I feel like they can be manipulated more than anything else.
What? Okay.
Subconsciously.
Yes. Yeah. I think maybe if I take the word controversial and replace it with divisive. Divisive? It divides the paranormal community. You either love it or you hate it.
I reckon Spirit Board.
Spirit
Definitely
Board, absolutely Spirit Board, yeah. I mean, we've seen it, haven't we? People have left the room.
Yes.
Because we've pulled out a wooden board with some letters on.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh no, I'm not having a Ouija board. No, I'm gone. See you later. Not having anything to do with it.
And that's their opinion.
That's their opinion, and that's absolutely fine. We always say when we're on investigations, look, if no one wants to do this, no one's going to force you to. You can leave the room with someone else if you want.
But that's the same with anything we do.
Yeah. No one ever forces anyone to try it and do anything.
We don't make them do anything. Some people, in fact, I know of people that don't like doing things such as human pendulums, which we'll talk about in a minute. But the board, for me, is one of the best pieces of equipment that we can use because it confuses me and it raises more questions than answers. And I love stuff like that because I like to be able to answer everything and I like to be able to explain phenomena and how equipment works and why it works and why it's possibly not real, I guess.
Yeah.
But a spirit board makes it so much so much more difficult to do that with. We've seen the glass move on its own. We did the hairdressers, and the glass moved with no one actually touching it. And we've had so many times people, smart asses kind of say to us, "Oh well, make the glass move without anyone touching it." Well, it did. We didn't ask it to. It just did. And so, I mean, I can't explain that. I can't explain how I've said to you guys before how someone's been asking the questions, not touching the glass, and the people who've touched the glass have answered every question correctly.
Yeah.
And they don't know each other. They don't know the answers.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big one for me in the way of believing all this, is the fact that for someone who isn't even on the board, as we'd say, to ask these questions and get the right answers from people that they don't know, that really baffles me.
Yeah, because if it's not a spirit moving the glass or however they're doing it, it has to be...
Well, either someone's got mind powers.
It's telekinesis, isn't it? You're talking about some other phenomena, which is just as mind-boggling.
Yes, yeah.
As a spirit moving the glass.
I was going to say, or someone's absolutely guessing and should play the lottery that day.
I mean, well, that's the other thing. Is I mean, we've put things in an envelope and asked for it to read what's in the envelope. It's never guessed it though.
Nope.
And my next plan is to blindfold the people who are doing it and ask the questions to see if they still move the glass around the board.
Interesting.
Just to see, it's not that I think people that do it are lying and aren't, being truthful. It's just you have to cover all bases.
Yeah, and I think the thing with the spirit board is if someone's trying to push a glass around a board, they're going to do it. If they're doing it subconsciously, it's going to be a lot more difficult than if they're consciously doing it.
Yeah.
If you get what I mean.
Yeah.
Because if you're consciously pushing the glass, you can feel the pressure on your finger from the rim of the glass. Because we only rest our fingers on the rim of the glass very, very lightly.
Yeah.
So if you're pushing it, you're going to know that you're pushing it.
Yeah.
So if someone's doing it subconsciously, for them not to know that, it's a lot more difficult for me to think that would be a thing.
Yeah, no, I get you.
Do you get what I mean?
I get you. And that's part of the reason why, we always make sure, or we ask for any participants to use their nail. So turn the little finger around, turn the hand around, and use the nail. Because when you have a nail on the glass, you try and push it then, and it just slides across the top of the glass, and it's quite difficult to move it. I mean, we warm the board up, and you can tell that people are pushing it, and oftentimes the glass falls over because people are trying to move it too fast and stuff like that. So for anyone that's ever done one, I hope I speak for us all when I say that you can tell when someone is moving the glass purposefully, on purpose.
And another thing I've always stated is, if someone's moving a glass, pushing it is one thing, but being able to pull it back towards you to get another letter, that's difficult. Because I to be honest, I've tried it when we've been just with ourselves, because you try these things because you think, well, how easy would it be to do?
To do it, yeah.
And to push a glass, no problem. But to pull it back the other way across a slippery board, You know,
It's not only that,
when
but
you're only trying to touch the rim of the glass.
because you
can't do it really.
You don't move either. You know, you're stood in or sat in the same position on the board, but the glass zigzags, it moves, it winds its way around the board. And as Ben says, if you're pushing it in one direction, when you've got 4 or 5 other fingers touching the glass, it's difficult then to manipulate it to come into another direction seamlessly.
You'd have to hope that someone's going to push it the other way
with you, kind of going with you.
Yeah.
You know, so we talk about the ideometer effect, and that's the kind of the subconscious movement of muscles without a stimulus action. So automatic handwriting would be this. So or pendulums or dowsing.
Yeah.
I think so. You're moving it. You're answering your own questions basically without knowing.
Yeah.
You don't think you're moving, but you are subconsciously. That's the ideometer effect. And I've heard people say that the spirit board is that, which is fine if there's one of you doing it, or maybe 2. But when you've got 5 or 6, what's the chances that you're all subconsciously wanting to answer exactly the same thing?
Yeah.
Why would you all want to take it to the letter J? Why wouldn't one person not want that and want to take it to the letter Y? It always flows seamlessly. And so if it is the ideometer effect and there's a collective subconscious effort to move the glass around the board, then that is fascinating.
Yeah.
That's something that needs exploring, that the fact that you can all interlink subconsciously and have or create the same motive with what you want out of the experiment. And that's interesting. So, I mean, people think it's the portal to hell. People think, oh, you can't have one in your house. I mean,
because you're going to release a demon into your house. Or...
We're looking at one right now, sitting on my living room floor, leaning up against my drum cymbals. Need to move those cymbals. But yeah, it's just a board.
It's a board with letters and numbers on.
We've cut letters out of paper, made a circle. It still worked. We've used just a glass on a table.
Yeah,
it still worked. It's a tool of communication. It's the same as a K2 meter. It's the same as a REM pod. It's exactly the same. You're asking for a spirit to communicate with you, and it is. And it's that simple. That doesn't mean people haven't had bad experiences with it, but people have had bad experiences with other pieces of equipment and with other things that we do. Unfortunately, I think because of the media, because of Hollywood, because of things like that.
That's where the whole bad rep has come from with this sort of thing.
It got demonised
from films and TV shows. I mean, it was invented as a game.
Yeah, well, it was. Ouija's trademarked by Hasbro.
Exactly.
And
it was a game for kids to play.
It means yes in French and German. And that's what it was. It was kids or whatever trying to get a spirit to say yes.
Yeah.
So I love it. It's probably next to the REM pod. I think I'm the same as Ben. Next to the REM pod, it's my favourite.
Yeah, I do like the spirit board.
Okay. Moving away from equipment, if there's any equipment you'd like us to discuss in part 2 when we get Les back on, let us know between now and then. Moving away from that, I also feel we should mention Derek Acorah.
Yeah.
Who, when we record this, passed away 2 days ago, I think.
Yes.
2 days ago. It's a shame. I mean, whether you believe he was genuine, whether you believe he was a fraud, maybe a bit of both. He always came across as a lovely bloke in the programs I watched him in and the interviews I saw him in and the book that I read of his. And I know he had a lot of controversy with Most Haunted. They set him up a few times and he fell for it, hook, line and sinker. Did you ever hear about that?
I've heard about that in the past,
Yeah, there was one. For those that don't know, Most Haunted is like the UK's version of Ghost Hunters or whatever. And Derek Acorah is a famous medium. And he basically hit fame by appearing on Most Haunted. And they set him up several times. There was a guy on there, I think his name was Kieran actually, and he was the skeptic of the show. And he tried to set up Derek by planting things in his head. So there was the one episode where, I can't remember the name of him, but he left a name of someone lying around and made sure that when he was talking about this name that Derek was within earshot. And mentioned this. I was like a slave trader. Or he was something like this, and mentioned this guy's name within earshot of Derek. And then during the show or during the recording of the show, Derek got possessed and claimed he was possessed by this name. And it was a made-up name. I think it was an anagram of Derek Lies or...
It was something like that. It was definitely an anagram of some sort.
It was Derek Lies or Derek Fraud or something like that. And he fell for it. And Derek then came out and said, Derek had a famous spirit guide called Sam, which everybody knew.
Sam, yeah.
And he came out and claimed that Sam had picked up on this name and had got confused and tried to backtrack a little bit. So who was telling the truth? I don't know. The skeptical, logical side of me tells me he was faking it. Does that mean everything he's done is fake? Probably not.
I suppose you can look at it as, maybe he was having an off day.
He's been having an off day. Maybe he was told to do it to promote the program, to make the program more interesting.
Maybe. Because, the thing is, and we've said this in the past as well, if you watched Most Haunted or Ghost Stories or Ghost Hunters or whatever you watch, and they were true to how we go on investigations, it would be an hour-long, boring program.
It would be. We sound there like we're really degrading what we do and we're saying our hobby's boring. But at times it is.
Yeah, we've been on investigations when nothing has happened. We've been there for hours and hours. 4 or 5 hours on an investigation, and we've had nothing.
Not a peep. Not a peep.
And, we've said they're not going to put that sort of thing on TV.
No.
Because the TV is for entertaining.
Yeah.
And that's what they want. They want entertainment.
Well, listeners, you may remember when we interviewed Ron Meyer a month or so ago, and he spoke about the paradox of Finding Bigfoot, the program, and how they'd said, the producers had told them, look, one rule, and that is we can't find Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Because if we find Bigfoot, there's no program.
Yeah.
And I've recently, in fact, yesterday, saw a new one, Expedition Bigfoot or something it's called.
Oh, did they find him?
Well, clearly not. And I often say, I remember saying it to Ron, if these guys had found stuff like this, if Most Haunted had found conclusive evidence of a ghost that hadn't been proved to be faked like it has every other time, then we'd know about it before it got to telly. Someone would leak it.
And I think the thing is as well is, even if it got to telly, a lot of people would still have trouble believing it because of all the things you can do
nowadays
with special effects, with computer programs.
That's an interesting topic, actually. That's one we should talk about. Can we ever trust our eyes or ears again because of the modern technology and the abilities?
So I'd say, if you're on investigation, for example, again, the one place that always sticks out in my mind is Draco Tunnels because you're so cut off from everything.
Yeah.
Then down there, I'd say yes. Because one, it's incredibly dark. Yep. So, you can't... Your eyes are one thing that you can't really use down there. So you've got to rely on your ears, your sense of touch, that sort of thing. But I know what you mean. Like, anywhere else you go, you've always got outside things playing on your mind, and...
I think that's for I guess a first-hand experience. But if you're, nowadays, how often do we see a blurred photo of Bigfoot? Or,
exactly, yeah.
A blurred photo of a UFO, or...
Well, the Loch Ness Monster. That's another one.
The Loch Ness Monster, yeah, or a ghost that. What's the first thing that everybody says nowadays? It's photoshopped.
Yeah.
Photoshop.
Right, it's fake, it's photoshopped.
And, before Photoshop was a word, people would say, oh, it's fake, it's trickery. They've manipulated the image, they've manipulated the footage. So there's always been that possibility that it's fake. What I'm saying is nowadays with CGI, Photoshop and other things, it's becoming more and more easier to trick people and more easier to make people believe what they're seeing.
Yeah, I suppose...
So do you think that at some point we will see real evidence of a ghost? Photographed, video, whatever, but when you look at it, you
instantly go, nah, it's fake.
Yeah.
Probably,
we could be looking at the real deal, the life-changing, game-changing piece of evidence.
Yeah.
But there's going to be doubt in your mind.
There's always going to be doubt. Though.
Is it fake?
I think
there's always going to be doubt. Yeah, but that doubt becomes larger because of the ability to manipulate evidence.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, is because people know what you can do with Photoshop, with video editing programs, your first thought these days is to go, no, it's fake.
It's fake.
And like you said, you could have a photo of Bigfoot in front of you, posing, you know, like he's doing a selfie or something.
Holding a sign saying, I'm real.
Yeah.
This isn't Photoshopped.
Yeah. And people are going to go, nah, it's Photoshopped.
And this is the point, you know. This is something people should think about, because has it been done on purpose? I doubt it. I mean, you know, why is it that every photo of a UFO is sketchy?
Well, I mean,
is blurry?
Even before Photoshop was a thing, even before video editing programs were like a common thing for a lot of people to be able to get their hands on. The one thing that sticks out in my mind, and you see it a lot on TV, there's a classic clip of a UFO flying around, and it ended up being like a tin on a piece of string or something.
Ah, yeah.
And I think it was some brothers or something that had filmed it.
Yeah.
And people believed it was real for a long time. Yeah. And then they came out and was like, oh no, we faked it.
We faked it, yeah.
You know, and that was before all this sort of thing, before, you know, video editing programs were freely accessible to everyone.
To everybody, yeah.
You know.
I mean,
I think there's always going to be that little bit of doubt.
Yeah. I think so. I mean, again, you know, let us know what you think, guys. Have you ever seen a photo or that you think is real and can be proven to be real? I mean, people have sent like photos of that Bigfoot, the famous Patterson photo of Bigfoot where he was walking across the clearing. Apparently, that's been analysed and has been proven to be real. You know, I mean, look at the whole alien autopsy videos and stuff like that. You know, I know Spyros is currently doing a tour. The guy who claims to have made the video,
right?
Created he's basically said it's fake because I made it.
Yeah.
He's touring the UK soon, talking about that and about how it's all got completely out of hand, basically. But you know, look at these kind of things, and I personally think it makes it difficult, and I think we're never ever going to be able to trust our eyes or ears again when it comes to this. No,
there's always going to be, no matter how real, you know, someone tells you it is, or how real it looks and that sort of thing, I think there's definitely always going to be that little bit in your mind that goes, I'm not sure.
Yeah, and I think the only way to combat this is to get out there and do it yourself.
Yeah.
Because if you find a photo, like that one I uploaded to Facebook the other day, if you find a photo, if you get a piece of audio, if you get a piece of video footage that you've got yourself, so you know you haven't faked it, you were with a group of people, you were all there, you can all rely on each other, you can all trust each other, because trust is a very important word when it comes to this kind of thing. You have to trust the people that you're with and what they're saying and what they're telling you they've seen and heard. It's true, you have to trust them. And if you can find something yourself, then that's all that matters, I guess. You know, you're not going to get rich or famous by selling it to the press or anything like that, but you can rest easy in your bed at night knowing that you've found some conclusive evidence that you believe to be true, because you know it's not fake, you know it's not hoaxed, and you've kind of gone through every thought process you could do to eliminate what it might be, and you finally arrived at the fact that actually that photo is a ghost.
Yeah.
And that's the only way you can combat it, is by going out and doing it yourself.
Well, they say, don't they, that, you know, seeing is believing.
Seeing is believing, yeah.
So if you see something for yourself, or like you say, you've taken a photo and you know that you've done that, nobody else has, nobody's faked it, then you're going to go, yeah, okay, that's that.
That's that, yeah. Okay, so we're probably going to come and round it off a little bit now. I went down to a house in Essex a few weeks ago, just before Christmas, to a family who are being hounded by what I would call a poltergeist. Doesn't mean it's evil. Poltergeist means noisy spirit. It's not evil. It's just a spirit activity that's noisy. The media, the
film industry.
People think poltergeist is a demon.
Well, it's because of the film, isn't it?
It's because of the film, yeah.
Kids getting sucked into TVs and stuff.
That's exactly, yeah. Slime coming down in the closet. I mean, really, if you've got a spirit that opens a drawer in your house and makes a noise while doing it, it's poltergeist.
Yeah.
Poltergeist is an activity. It's a form of activity. It isn't a spirit itself. So it's a poltergeist activity. And this is what's happening. They're having pennies thrown at them. They've had a suitcase thrown at them. They've had scratches, they've had knocks, they've had bangs, they've had a lot of stuff happen. And we went down and we walked in the house, and within the first 5 minutes there were 2 pennies thrown down the stairs. And we were all downstairs. No one was upstairs. and 2 pennies were thrown down the stairs at us. One of them was a New Zealand 10 pence. Don't know where that came from. And then we were all sat downstairs doing a spirit board session, and as clear as day, we all heard footstep, footstep, footstep upstairs on the landing, and then the door creak open. We got the door opening on video with no one there, and we all ran upstairs like, what the hell was that? So the room that it had gone into, we then kind of split up, and I went into this room and felt something hit me. So I've kind of freaked out a little bit, turned the light on, to find a trainer had hit me and landed on the bed. And the trainer had been thrown. It was in like a case on the back of the door, and it had been thrown at me across the room, a good 5 or 6 feet. And I left it on the bed. And then about an hour or so later, I was in another room, and a guy that was with us came running out of that same room, screaming, basically, and saying something had hit him. So we've gone into the room, and lo and behold, the shoe I'd left on the bed is now in the middle of the floor. And that's what had hit him. We're going to be going back down there in a few weeks, and we're going to be taking a medium with us, and she's currently debating as to whether she wants a priest, because she just wants this thing gone. We're not sure what it is, but we're going to try and help her figure it out and get rid of it so she can get her life back, basically. So if anyone listening needs our help, the Ghostbusters, you can give us a call, and we'll be happy to talk to you about what you're experiencing, maybe help you try and figure out what it is. We're always open to helping people out and to investigating new places and new occurrences. It's always a good thing. So yeah, I guess we'll round it off.
Yeah, I think we'll wrap it up here. So this does it for part 1 of this podcast.
Les will be with us for part 2.
Yeah, so we'll be able to get his opinions on everything, get some experiences from him.
He's got a lot.
And he's got a lot.
He's got a lot of stories to tell. Don't want to ruin any of them. Some of them are great stories.
Yes, yeah.
One of them involves the churchyard where I found that photo that I uploaded to the group. It's the same place. Probably before we were born.
Yeah.
But it's a good story, actually. I'll make sure he tells that. I think there's going to be another podcast between now and then. I know we're interviewing Melissa next week, so we had Melissa Martell. You may remember we uploaded a faulty podcast with her.
Yeah, we lost pretty much half the audio on it for some unknown reason.
Yeah, we don't know why. So we just deleted the whole thing. And that's why if you're looking for episode 4, you will never find it. Ever. Because we deleted it.
Yeah.
So we're going to get her on, and we'll be talking about the same topic, which will be green ladies and other spirits attached to UK estates, stately homes, manor homes. And what those colours mean. Do they mean anything? And then it'll probably be Les. We'll get Les on. And we'll give you part 2 of what we've discussed tonight. So hopefully you've enjoyed it. Hopefully you're having a good start to the new year. Any feedback, any questions, any comments, leave them in the comments section or contact us at paranormalparadigmpodcast@gmail.com or via our Facebook page. And as always, thank you very much for listening.
Yep, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.